Hi there, how are you? I'm Mr. Muso. Today we are looking on yet another topic, interesting topic. We are talking about the Directory 1795 to 1799. The Directory 1795 to 1799 was a new government that came to power after the convention. Remember the convention, the time of the terror, the time of being guillotined, the time of being butchered, the time of being executed. People were killed. People were executed during the time of the convention. It was the time of terror, time of fear. People were fearing for their lives. People always lived in fear, in total fear during the time of the convention. So, the convention, when their government demised, a new government came into power, and this government was known as the Directory. Why did they adopt the name Directory? We see that from the word directory, we have got a word direct. A directory, direct. If you split the term directory into two, we are going to have the term direct. So they adopted this name. Why? It is because they were going to direct the people. They were going to lead the people. They were going to show the people the path that they were supposed to take after the convention. Remember, people were coming from the time of being butchered. They were coming from the time of being guillotined. So they had to say that it is our responsibility to lead you, to show you the path that you're supposed to take. According to them, according to the Directory, this was the time of peace. This was the time of liberalism. This was the time for people to live without being intimidated. So that is why they to say that it is our responsibility to direct you, to show you the path that you are supposed to take, the path that you are supposed to lead. So when they adopted this name, they went on to adopt a white color flag. The white color flag that they adopted, it symbolized a peace. This was a new era in the history of France. Why new era? Because it was now time of peace, as opposed to the time of guillotining, as opposed to the time of being slaughtered, as opposed to the time of being butchered. It was now time for peace, the time of reconciliation, time of moving together, time of fulfilling the ideals of the French Revolution. So we are seeing that they were eager to bring new reforms, reforms that the people were agitating for, were advocating for, when they revolted in 1789, when the revolution started, when the French Revolution began. The Directory was led by 5 directors, and these directors, one of them was supposed to resign annually. He was supposed to step down annually, and he was supposed to be replaced by someone else. So that is how they organized their constitution. So when they came to power, people had so much hope. This is what we were clamoring for. This is what we were wanting. This is what we were agitating for. A government now that is going to fulfill the ideals of the French Revolution. A government now that is going to do what we wanted when we revolted in 1789. For example, let me give you another example here. We have got Johnso. Johnso, he is from the rural areas. Johnso from the rural areas, we see that he is used to the setup of the rural areas. One of the days, Johnso wants to visit the Budi, the brother in Harare. So When he visits the brother in Harare, he thinks that the setup in the rural areas is similar to the setup in the urban areas. So when he arrives in the urban area, he arrives in Harare, what happens? We see that he sees that things are now different. Cars will be moving around. Robots all over, people are busy, no one greets one another, it is busy, 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 and so forth. So you'll be asking, hey, wait there, I'm asking for my brother Zuze. Do you know my brother Zuze? Oh, Zuze in Harare. Hey, madam, stop there. I'm asking for my brother Zuze. Do you know Zuze? Zuze in Harare. Where? So we see that. Because of that, now a police officer will come and take Johnson to the police station and say that, Johnson, what is your problem? I'm looking for my brother Zuze. Do you know him? All right, what is the surname? His name is Zuze Matigim. Okay, Zuze Matigim. They will now consult, they will now go to the directory and they will look for Zuze Matigas. Zuze Matigas. Oh, Zuze Matigas. He stays at number 14 Crescent Avenue, Masasa Park. Then they will pick a phone. There will be a phone number in the directory. How are you? Are you Zuze Matigas? Yes, and there is your young brother here, Johnson. Oh, he's my brother. Oh, let me come there and collect him. So we are seeing that Zuze and Johnson, they linked because of the directory. So we are also seeing that the people in France, they were lost. As they were lost now, here is the directory. They are now saying that we are going to link you. We are going to bring you together. We are going to show you the way. So the directory, it directs. It's a book where we find phone numbers. It's a book where we find location or a site. So here the directory was saying that we are now going to show you the path. We are now going to show you the direction that we are supposed to take so that things could improve in the country. So because of that now, people start to have hope now. The days that we have been waiting for, the days that we're clamoring for are now here. So this was the new dawn. This was the new era that the people in France started to think that it was now taking place in their country. So basically, that is what we have on the background information about the directory. Let's move on and talk about the constitution that they established, the constitution of the directory. In their constitution, at the top, there was the executive authority. The executive authority, it was in the hands of 5 directors. And like what I said, these directors, they had equal powers. These directors, we see that one of them was supposed to resign at the end of each year. So annually, one of the directors was supposed to step down. Below the executive authority, we see that we had a committee of 250 or a council of 250. This council acted as a senate. It was the upper chamber. It was responsible for approving laws that were debated in the lower chamber. So when one director stepped down, a person from the upper chamber, a person from the council of 250, he was supposed to be elevated. One of them was supposed to be elevated and he became a director. Below a council of 250, there was a council of 500. This acted as the legislative assembly. It consisted of members of parliament from different parts of France. Remember, France was big. MPs coming from different parts of France, in Marseille, in Lyon, in Lavardais, in Paris, in Versailles. We're supposed to have MPs. So here we are seeing a council of 500 which consisted of MPs. This was the lower chamber. What was it responsible for? It was supposed to debate laws. It was supposed to formulate laws. It was supposed to amend laws. After debating laws, they were sent to the upper chamber, which we have said that it was a committee of what? Of 250. Then below that now, we see that we had the tribune, which was the system of justice. It was responsible that people were tried by jury. It was responsible for seeing that there was a fair system of justice. Ndaro wampamba, ndaro wazvipakera. You were supposed to go to the courts of laws, and the courts of laws were supposed to determine the course of justice to take against you. Below that now, there was the local councils. The local councils were responsible for the administration of the local people. So here now we are seeing the constitution of the directory. This is how their constitution was organized. But from their constitution now, we are already seeing some of the weaknesses of the directory. These weaknesses were clearly shown when they came to power in 1795. One of the weaknesses was that the government consisted of too many people. There were several people in the government. You can imagine the upper chamber, 250, they were too many. Below that now, a council of 500, they were too many. So because of that now, differences, clashes, different ideologies, it meant that they were going to be the order of the day. People were going to be, they were going to clash, they were going to have serious clashes. Why? Because these people, they belonged to different political parties. So as a result of that now, it meant that they different ideologies. So we are going to see that this government, somehow it was weakened by so many people who were in it. So as a result of that now, we are seeing one of the weaknesses of the directory, that its government comprised of so many people. But however, at the top there were 4 directors. There were 5 directors. That on its own, it was a success in the sense that they did away with despotism. Despotism was done away with. So that is what we have on the constitution of the directory. Let's move on and talk about the domestic policy of the directory. How was their domestic policy organized? We'll start by looking on the political reforms. On the political reforms, let's start with the challenges that were faced by the directory. Number 1, uprisings. Uprisings, we are talking about upheavals. Uprisings, people were rioting, people were revolting. Why? Because the prices of bread, they continued rising. The government could not do anything to assist the people who were suffering in the country. People suffered in the country. Why? It is because of the prices of bread that were always increasing. So people were now questioning. You were saying you are known as the directory, you are going to direct us. So you directed us so that the prices of bread could increase. Do something about the price of bread. The directory could not solve this problem. Instead, it had to thwart, it had to stop, it had to use unscrupulous means to stop the uprisings that were taking place. So because of that now, you violently crushing those uprisings, it led to its unpopularity. Because of this now, it led the directory to be unpopular. So the issue of uprising became a problem, a serious problem that was faced by the directory. Another problem that they faced was that of the Bebefu conspirators. Historian, Bebefu. If you are now old, those are the names that you should give your children. Bebefu. Baba Bebefu, Amai Bebefu. Yeah, that a name. That's so that we are a historian. Hello, my bebe, Baba Bebe. Paris say Baba Bebe. Mushe Baba Bebefu. Bebefu, we see that he had a political party which was known as the Party of Equals. It believed in communism and socialism. So what did they do? They now wanted to topple the government. They now wanted to remove the government, and by removing the government now, they wanted to become the next government in the country. So because of that now, Bebefu, he was arrested. When he was arrested, he was beaten, wakarowa. When he was beaten, he was guillotined. Musoro kanzi nkama. Enda kusera uko, gwedla, godlo. Musoro, Bebefu, died. Why? It is because he tried to remove the government that was there by force. So the Bebefu conspirators led the directory to be unpopular. Why? It is because when the directory came to power, they said that the days of guillotining were over. They to say that it was time of white terror. It was now time of peace. People were no longer going to be butchered. People were no longer going to be executed. But he died. So people were saying now, is this what you told us when you came to power? Obviously it's no. So because of that now, it led to the unpopularity of the directory, the issue of Bebefu conspirators. Another problem, political problem that they faced was the issue of corruption. Like what I said, one of the directors annually at the end of each year was supposed to step down. But now, Bebefu, he used bribes, he used unscrupulous means to retain his position. Bebefu, he remained at the helm of the directory during the entire period of the directory from 1795 to 1799. Why? He was using bribes so that he could remain on power. So because of that now, people lost confidence in the directory. Why? It is because of using dubious means, because of being corrupt. So people lost confidence in the directory, and it led to their unpopularity. Another problem that was faced by the directory, the political problem, was that the franchise was narrow. So many people were not in a position of voting. So many people were not in a position of participating in the elections. So that on its own angered the people. Why? Because when the directory came to power, they said that it was now time of fulfilling the ideals of the French Revolution. People were now going to be part and parcel of this government. People were going to contribute. People were going to be part of everything that was going to take place in the country. But the people were not in a position to vote. So many people could not vote. So that on its own, it led to the unpopularity of the directory. Another problem that they faced was that the system of justice was not fair, the unfair system of justice. The system of justice, it benefited few individuals, especially those who were wealthy. Those by Tambanamo, those who were poor, they were not given a fair trial, they were not tried by jury. So by having an unfair system of justice, it led to the unpopularity of the directory. Another problem that they faced was the issue of press censorship. Newspapers were censored. If you are saying press censorship, chirungu, we are talking about censoring information that was published in the newspapers. Page 1, directory, bakapenga and penga. Page 2, you know Baras and Baras. Page 3, talent rent, Page 4, directory, Page 5, directory, sports news. The directors, they arrived at who Mfakos donated books. They arrived at where Mabuku, they donated soccer balls. So everything was about the directory from page 1 to page sports. Page 6 was directory. So that frustrated the people. Why? It is because they did not fulfill what they promised the people when they came to power in 1795. We are going to direct you. The days of being tortured were over. The days of truth now are at your footsteps. But now this was not the actual things that were taking place in the country. So because of that now, it led to the unpopularity of the directory. So because of these problems now comes a man, my man, Napoleon Bonaparte. He started to promise the people, when I come to power, I am going to fulfill all the ideals of the French Revolution. When I come to power, the days of hunger, the days of striking for bread are going to be over. Napoleon started to have confidence now, informing people, telling people about what he he regarded as the ideal France. So because of that now, it explains why later on Napoleon eventually came to power in 1799. Let's move on and talk about the economical activities or economical by the Directory. Number one, the issue of the assignats. When the Directory came to power, they removed the money that was there. The money that was there in France was known as the assignats. They were overzealous. They removed the assignats. They replaced them with mandates. The mandates that were introduced, they were valueless. They were worthless. They were useless. They lost value as soon as they were introduced. There was inflation in the country. The French money became worthless. It became valueless. The mandate that they introduced, the price of goods skyrocketed. Commodities were now expensive. So because of that now, people were angered. Why? It is because their money was useless. To buy a loaf of bread, you were supposed to have a lot of notes so that you could buy a loaf of bread. To buy a small commodity, a small item, you're supposed to have a lot of notes. So that on its own angered the people. When you came to power in 1795, you promised us that you were going to revive the economy. You promised us that things were going to change economically in the country. But now look, the money was useless. Look, the mandate was valueless. Look now, commodities are skyrocketing each and every time. So because of that now, we see that it led to the unpopularity of the Directory. So because of that now, D. Richards now, he comes and now say that the Directory, by failing to fix the economy, it was ill-fated from birth. Other historians, they say that because of failing to arrest the economy, the Directory was doomed from the start, or that it was a child born dead. Others say that the Directory was non-existent. It never existed. Why? It is because it failed to revive the economy. So because of that, it was non-existent. Because of that now, it was doomed. Because of that, it was a child born dead. Because of that now, it was non-existent. It was ill-fated from birth. So this explains why later on Napoleon rose to power. He had to promise the people, when I come to power, economically France is going to be revived. Economically things are going to take a new shape. Economically things are going to improve for the betterment of the people. So because of that, business people, so many people started to have confidence in Napoleon, and as a result of that now, eventually Napoleon rose to power. Then, economically again, we see that the Directory could not do much to expand France economically. The issue of industrial expansion. Nothing much was done by the Directory to expand issue of commerce and industry. Nothing much was done to expand industrially France. So because of that now, trade still remained stagnant. It did not improve vastly. This is not what the people in France expected. They expected a leader. They expected leaders who were going to expand France economically, who were going to expand the economy of France, trade, commerce being expanded. So because of that now, the economy of France, it remained stagnant. It was not vibrant, and the people expected the economy to be vibrant. Why? Because when the Directory came to power, they promised the people that they were going to do so, but they could not do that. So because of that now, the issue of failing to expand the industry of France, it led the Directory to be unpopular. Then you move on, you also talk about the issue of unemployment. The rate of unemployment still remained high. Yes, although some people were absorbed in companies, in factories, but still the rate of unemployment was high. So many people were not employed, and this explains why they were engaged in uprisings that were taking place. Why? Because they did not have anything to do. If you don't have anything to do now, you are engaged in unscrupulous behaviors such as demonstrating and so forth. So they were always demonstrating. Why? Because of the issue of unemployment. So because of that now, it again explains why the directory was unpopular. My main man, Napoleon Bonaparte, now promising the people, when I come to power, it means that I am going to start public works, in which you see people being absorbed in different employment, what jobs that I'm going to create. So because of that now, Napoleon eventually came to power in 1799. Let's talk about the social reforms, social activities that took place during the time of the Directory. Number one, the drought of 1795. A serious drought came in France. It occurred in France 1795. That is the time when the Directory came to power. We are going to lead you. It's time now of white terror. It's time for Magut. You're going to guta. You're going to have a lot of food. Drought, here it is. The Directory could not do much to assist the people who were facing serious problems of food shortages, people who were facing serious challenges of starvation, poverty, and hunger. So because of that now, people were angered. You are not assisting us. We are perishing. We are dying because of poverty. We are dying because of hunger, but you are not assisting us. So because of that now, it led to the unpopularity of the Directory. Why? Because it could not assist the people who were facing serious food shortages. It's just like what took place in 1788. You remember on the French Revolution, when people were facing starvation, Mary Antoinette was quoted as saying, if they cannot buy bread, let them buy cakes. People were angered, and that led to the revolution. So here now, people are angered because they don't have lumo. They want lumo, but the Directory could not provide people with food. So it led to their unpopularity. Number two, the issue of morally or sexually corrupt. The directors, they were morally corrupt. They were sexually corrupt. What do we mean? We are saying that they did not act as role models. If you are a leader, you are supposed to be a role model. Whatever you say, wherever you go, whatever you touch, everyone will be watching you, because they want to be like you in the near future. They want to be like you in time to come. But the directors were not like that. For example, Talleyrand came with his wife. And what happened? Barras started to admire the wife of Talleyrand. He even went on to propose love to the wife of Talleyrand. You can imagine, Talleyrand is one of the directors. Barras is one of the directors. Then this guy, he has got courage to go and propose a wife of a fellow colleague. That clearly show that these people were doomed. How can you nyenga when you are a leader? You can't nyenga when you are a leader. Why? Because you are a leader. You should not nyenga. You should be a role model. But these people, they were still nyengering. They were still proposing love. So because of that now, people lost confidence in these nyengering boys. Why? It is because they wanted people who were going to spearhead, people who were going to revive the economy, people who were going to change the outlook of the country, not be worried about still these things which are not important, things that were not significant in changing the outlook of the country. So because of that now, it led to the unpopularity of the Directory. They were sexually, morally corrupt. Next one, the issue of the church. The relations between the church and the state, they were antagonized during the time of the convention. Herbert, during the time of the convention, introduced Herbertism or atheism, that new religion of reasoning. People were now reasoning on how best the revolution was supposed to continue. So because of that now, the relations between the state and the church were antagonized. So when the Directory came, they were supposed to realize that so many people in France were Catholics. So in order to get support from these people, what were they supposed to do? They were supposed to establish good relations with the church, But they did not do so. So because of that now, they could not get a lot of support from the people. Why? It is because of the bad relations that existed between the state and the church. So that on its own led to their unpopularity. Here comes Napo. If you vote for me, if you have confidence in me, I am going to revive the good relations that used to exist between the state and the church. And that is exactly what Napoleon did in 1801. He came to power 1799. 1801, he signed the Concordat with the church, and he got a lot of support from the church, from the people in France. Let's move on and talk about another aspect, the issue of education. The rate of illiteracy still remained high in the country. So many people in France were illiterate. They could not do much to improve the education system that was in the country. So many people in France expected education system to be revived, to be improved, so that by so doing, so many people in France were going to be illiterate. They were going to be literate, but they could not do so. Then Napoleon now, he had to promise people, now when you vote for me, if you've got confidence in me, the education system was going to change in the country. And that is exactly what Napoleon did when he came to power. We are going to see schools being built, literacy level vastly improving, and yet he even went on to build the first university of France. So by so doing, Napoleon, he was in a position of getting a lot of support from the people, because he had promised them that he was going to improve the education system that was in the country. You move on. You also talk about the issue of land. This one is a positive reform in the sense that when the Directory came to power, land still remained in the hands of the peasants. Remember, the peasants had acquired land during the course of the French Revolution. You still remember about the civil constitution of the clergy, whereby the church lands, they were taken and they were given to the peasants. These lands still remained in the hands of the people, and by making people remain with these lands, we can say that the Directory somehow was successful. So these are some of the social reforms that we are supposed to talk about on the Directory. Let's move on and talk about some of the successes of the Directory. We have accused the Directory, but there were some notable achievements that we can highlight on the Directory. For example, number one, the issue of land that I've talked about. It was a positive reform. Number two, they managed to stop the uprisings that were taking place. A peaceful environment generally existed in France. Why? Because whenever revolts took place, they were stopped by the Directory. Number three, they managed to make the revolution continue. Remember, the Allied powers wanted to come and stop the revolution from continuing in the country. But now they were in a position of making the revolution continue in the country. So this is a plus. It is a success on the part of the Directory. Another success that we can talk about, it is because they lasted for a reasonable period of time. They came to power 1795 to 1799. So 1795, 96, 97, 98, 99, about 5 years. It's a reasonable period of time, because the National Assembly, it only lasted 1789 to 1791. You see that the years were not as many as those of the Directory. The Legislative Assembly, 1791 to 1793, 2 years. The Convention, 1793 to 1795, 2 years. But this government lasted for a reasonable period of time. So that on its own is a success. So this is what we can say about the Directory. So we are seeing that the domestic reforms of the Directory, they clearly showed that this government failed to a greater extent. Their policies, their reforms were a failure to a greater extent. So because of that now, it led to their unpopularity, and eventually Napoleon came to power. Another point that you're supposed to note on this government known as the Directory, it is the same government that was known as the Thermidorian government. So the Thermidorian government is the directory. The directory is the Thermidorian government. It's one and the same thing. For example, Muso is Musongelwa. My surname is Musongelwa. So Musongelwa is Muso. It's one and the same thing. The directory is the Thermidorian government. Let's move on and talk about the foreign policy of the directory. We'll start with the Italian campaign. On the Italian campaign, we see that a general rose in France in the name of Napoleon. He inspires me. I want you to be like Napoleon. He was not known by anyone, but according to D. Thompson, this man, he was determined for success. He was determined for a great life. He was determined for greatness. He rose from being an ordinary soldier. You can imagine a soldier. He rose from being an ordinary soldier and eventually he became an army general. We are told by historians that he was a man of few snatches of sleep. While he's sleeping around 1 a.m., he could wake up and start telling himself, I'm going to be a great person. I'm going to be a great man. They will read about me in the newspapers. They will watch me in the televisions. I will be a great person. That mindset led him to be a great leader. You can also be a great leader. Don't be discouraged by your environment. Don't be discouraged with what you are facing at the moment. Don't be discouraged by your family setup. Don't be discouraged by where you are staying. You can become a great person. It's possible. It's in the mind. It's only in the mind. When other soldiers were running, he was different. And because of that now, if you are different, you are recognized. He was recognized because he was different. So, when he rose to become an army general, the soldiers in France, they were demotivated. We don't have the army in France because the army of France was always being defeated. Talk about the American War of Independence, they ended up running away. You talk about the 1792 war, boom, boom, boom. They were roared. We don't have an army. The army is discouraged, and Napoleon is the general now. What did he do now? Come here, young boys. You can do it. And I'm telling you, you are watching me, you can do it. You can have 15 points. You can have 14 points. It's possible. Don't worry about your situation. Don't worry about anything. Don't worry. You can do that. You can be a great man. It's very possible. You can have 1, 2, 3 sittings. All level, 2 subjects, 1, 3, but we are now doing A level. You can have 15 points even in 3 sittings. It's possible. I've seen people like that. So don't be discouraged. Last time, possibly, you wrote your exams, you managed to get E in history, or you had about 3 points. Don't worry. Still, you can have 15 points. It's possible. You might have lost your parents. You might have been serious problems, serious challenges at home. It's very possible. It's in the mindset. It's in the mind. But finally, you know it's possible. You training them, reading every time, praying to God. In the morning, pray to God. In the afternoon, pray to God. Before you sleep, pray to God. It's possible. With God, it's possible. He is the source of life. I want to be a great person. God lead me. He will lead you. Certainly, He will assist you. He is a God of impossibilities. He is a wonderful God. It's possible to fight Austria after they were trained. We can do that, Mdara. We can do that. We are still on the Italian campaign. What happened? Italy was controlled by Austria. So many areas in Italy were controlled by Austria. Which are these areas? Number 1, Lombardy and Venetia. Number 2, Parma, Modena, and Tuscany. Number 3, Naples and Sicily. These 3 areas, They were controlled by Austria. Let me take them again. Lombardy and Venetia, Parma, Modena and Tuscany, Naples and Sicily. These are areas in Italy, but they are controlled by Austria. Only 2 areas in Italy are independent. Number 4, the Papal States. The Papal States were controlled by the Pope, but they were independent because they were controlled by the Pope. Number 5, Piedmont or Sardinia is the only area in Italy that was independent. It was led by Victor Emmanuel. So, Napoleon now, I'm coming back to my story now. After training his soldiers, he had to say now, we can attack Austria and win. Yeah, we can do that. You can write your exam and get 15 points. It's possible, Vanangu. Don't be discouraged, but it's possible. There is no mother who go to the maternity and say that this is the only mother who gives Vanavi 15 points. Where you can do that. We can fight Austria and defeat. Yes, we can, Mudara. They fought against Austria. When they fought against Austria, people expected France. It was a weak nation. Based on the record, Masure Oku. They fought against Austria, and Austria was defeated. People look down upon you. People laugh at you. People discourage you. People think you are nothing. If you say anything, they laugh at you. Don't worry about those people. Be yourself. Believe in yourself. You can do that. You fought against Austria. Austria was defeated. Your parents would be surprised. Oh, Grace. Oh, Peter. Oh, Jagi. 14, 15 points. And you become a celebrity. You become a celebrity at your school. It's possible. After Austria was defeated, people were surprised. First victory of France after so many years. Austria was forced to sign the Treaty of Comfort for you. You can imagine everyone in France, Napo, Akapenga, Napo, Jiri say Napo, Jiri say Napo, Napo. He had done it. So after defeating Austria, he took those areas in Italy that Austria possessed, Lombardy and Venetia, Parma, Modena and Tuscany, Naples and Sicily. Napoleon took them from Austria. And when he took them from Austria, he formed a new state which was known as the Cisalpine Republic. So this was a successful story on the Italian campaign, but it's taking place under the Directory. So it was a success on the part of the Directory. It was a success on the part of the Directory. Then let's move on and talk about the second aspect, the Egyptian campaign. Napoleon, after being encouraged by the success on the Italian campaign, after having 15 points, after having 14 points, it encourages you. Your confidence is boosted. Napoleon had to say, I can fight Britain. I can defeat Britain. But how did you want to fight Britain? You wanted to set a blockade of the British ships that passed through the Suez Canal. We see that is what he wanted to do on the Egyptian campaign. Suez Canal, it is in Egypt. So that is why this incident is called the Egyptian campaign. So he had to deploy his troops, he had to go to Egypt to set this blockade. It took several months, but unfortunately Britain was already aware about this. By the time Napoleon arrived in Egypt, the fleet of Britain under Wellington was already in Egypt. And as a result of this now, this incident was not successful. He returned back in France. When he returned back in France, he tried to stage a coup d'etat. He tried to remove the Directory, the government that was there, the government that he was working for. But the first one, this coup d'etat, was not a success. Then, on the second attempt, with the assistance of his brother Lucien, he eventually removed the Directory and he became the next leader of France in 1799. So what can we say about the Egyptian campaign? Although he failed, but it was a success indirectly. Why? That courage. Courage of challenging a big nation such as Britain led people to have confidence in Napoleon, and eventually on the second coup d'etat, we see him coming to power. So Napoleon now becomes the next leader of France in 1799. So Manangu, that is what we have on the directory, this interesting topic, the directory. So what can we say overall on the directory? The directory, its successes were outweighed by its failures. There were so many failures than the successes. Although the foreign policy was successful because of Napoleon, but however, domestically, this government was unpopular. Why? Because it failed to implement so many reforms that they promised the people when they came to power in 1795. This is all what I can say on the directory. I'm Mr. Muso. Thank you.